And for us on the other side, we're a public company, and so all the rigor and reporting and the due diligence and the investor scrutiny that goes with a public company was there. It was very clear that Your Tech Online was not going to be accretive to the bottom line, but we also didn't have the core expertise to pull off very quickly in terms of how we were going to scale the workforce at a gross margin that made sense for us. And so, yes, Steve and team were very nice, but they also had something we needed. And in the conversations internally as we approached them, we were very clear about both quantifying the impact it would have on our R&D acceleration and our gross margin. In fact, we spent a lot of time, probably without them realizing it, how extremely accurate we were in terms of impact on the P&L. But we were very clear that when we went back to the marketplace and said, hey, we're going to buy this company, we were not going to be able to say, oh, and by the way, here's the EPS change or anything like that. And so on one hand, Steve and company, I think, thought, this is great. These guys are sitting on $120 million. And we were sitting there going, this deal's got to make sense, because otherwise Wall Street will cream us for doing a deal that doesn't feel right. What we needed, and this was some of the walkaway points, we needed proximity to the team. They were in Canada, we were in Silicon Valley, and so we demanded that certain key employees actually move down to San Francisco area because we needed their expertise. And at one point I remember all of us saying, if Steve and some of his team and some other people don't move, we're going to walk from this deal, because why would we do it? The other thing that Your Tech Online, they had some, Steve in particular had some relationships with some potential customers that we needed, that we didn't have. And so the other part was, well, they're going to come down, some of his people are going to show us how to do this work from home thing, but Steve and I are going to work together and go out and get some business. And so if we can't claim that it's accretive from a revenue point of view, we got to go close some deals fast so that we can get back to Wall Street a quarter or two later and say, see, we bought Your Tech Online, and here are 2, 3, 4 new deals, whatever it was going to be.
Yeah, I think, so going back to us having to move down there, from building a technology company, I think it's kind of a no-brainer. If anybody has the opportunity to move down to the Bay Area, and knowing especially that I'm going to do another one at some point, you got to jump on that opportunity and take the ride, because it's definitely worth the experience. So that wasn't really all that tough for us from an office standpoint moving down there. I think it was very difficult for our families. And the main reason why we actually moved back after they removed my handcuffs. It took us 30 days actually to move back, only because my family did not like the Bay Area, but I do. So I travel back there 2 weeks out of the month currently, because I need a shot in the arm of Bay Area juice. And it's so important to be down there and hang out in the Bay, just to understand the culture that somebody like Richard brings, or our advisors bring to our companies, and understand that, especially in Canada. And I didn't actually get that or understand that so I started my company in 2000, and in 2005 is when I really understood that Bay Area culture really made a difference from even a marketing standpoint in positioning my business. When we got advisors from the Bay and people integrated into our business from the Bay Area, that kind of moved our business from here to here in probably 90 days. So if currently you do not have Bay Area influence in your business, I would highly suggest that you find some. The first way I actually did it was through LinkedIn. And I sent out, 50 LinkedIn messages to top CEOs in the Bay. Most of them didn't respond, but 2 of them did, and one of them was the CEO of McAfee. And he's a good friend of mine today because of that. And it was just all luck, and which is luck and hard work, I guess, but which is one of the ways that I met Tim, because if I wouldn't have Richard, because if I wouldn't have met a guy named Tim, I wouldn't have met Richard, and the acquisition never happened. So relationships, I think going back to, the dance and kind of closing points, relationships were by far, the business worked and we proved out the model and that worked. We couldn't scale it, which is why we needed to be acquired so that these guys could bring the cash and the resources to help us scale. But at the end, it really came down to their team liked our team. We liked them. We knew we could work with them. We're both no longer with Support.com, but we both have good relationships with the people that are currently there. And they're doing great today. A lot of my team are still there. I know a lot of people that work for Richard are still there, and because the Bay Area really is a small community at the end, right?
The one other comment I would have about the deal was, this was a public company buying a small private company, especially a private company in Canada. So there were some legal issues over incorporation in Canada versus the United States, but I remember the deal almost fell apart at one point because, and I say this through sincere friendship, their cap table and kind of some of the accounting was a mess. And so,
to say the least,
And in hindsight, I don't know, maybe Steve would have done a few things differently, maybe not, and we got the deal done. But it did make it difficult because I remember both the finance people and the legal people, flipping out at times that, there were some investors who had to be made right and made whole. There were some kind of, it's not important what it was, but just some things that, none of it was bad from a private company point of view, but when you're, doing Sarbanes-Oxley reporting and you're going to have to declare all this stuff to the United States SEC, you got to be sure that everything is whistle clean.
And that stuff doesn't clear itself up in 30 days.
No, so it would go on and on.
Long time
we had to at one point. I remember we had to declare something to the SEC about something that was going to be left over from some of their shareholders or something, and it took like 60 days to get the SEC to clear it. And in the meantime, when deals like that, when they start to slide sideways like that, that's not a good thing for anybody. It was fine in the end, but that certainly was in some ways the hardest part.
Yeah, huge lesson there, and especially with my new company and the way I structured it, structured way differently, way cleaner, a lot of stuff I won't do again, which if you want to ask me later what some of those things were, I mean, you got to pay attention to that stuff now as you're taking in angel money or whatever it is, because it will mess it up and kill a deal. Actually, the second acquisition that we were supposed to do before Support.com, that's part of our cap table was part of the problem as well. So you got to pay attention to that.
Yep. And then we've got 1 minute left. The other thing that's important is Steve and I are both gone from Support.com, but many of Steve's team are still there. My team are still there and working together. And I think the thing that we haven't talked about much was after the acquisition, the kind of surprise of all of a sudden, 1, moving to California, 2, working for a public company, coming into a structure, frankly, a very different culture. Steve, I think Steve had a little bit of shock when all of a sudden, he had to fill out forms every quarter about who he knew and who said what to whom and all this stuff. Especially when you're in business development, you got to report everything you do.
Yeah, not fun. Anyways, it was a good time though. Yeah. A good ride. Good ride. Anyways,
that's our story.
That's good. We're good.
All right.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
You left some Canadian money there on the ground.
Whoa.